Dora. Hello once again. This is Veronica Hamilton, the lead developer of Unwritten, the official Myst tabletop role-playing game. And it's Tuesday once again, so we're going to be doing our walkthroughs. I'm going to adjust some sound levels here, and we'll see how it works. Um, but yeah, we're going to be doing the Tuesday walkthrough. Uh, we are in the midst of uh, running Exile. By the way, if you're in the chat, please let me know on how the sound is going, etc., etc. Um, we're running Exile. We have already um, done Amateria, and we've kind of done the basics of Janan. Um, so we'll be go ahead and we're going to probably be going to Voltaic next, and then into Idana, um, depending on how things go. I'm pretty good at Voltaic. Um, at least I remember most of it. Idana, I'm not very good with Idana. Um, Adana, I get lost in Adana real quick. It's probably one of the locations of some of my most frustrating play in the Myst series because of some of those, left and rights and just, little places that you had to go to that I just completely missed every time. So, you know, we may get to Adana today, and if we do, you get to watch me get lost even more than usual. So, yay team, I guess. Um, Well, I should probably do the usual stuff. Just remember that if you like what we do here, and by we I mean mostly me, um, we have Patreon, which is patreon.com/unwritten journeys. The more people who patronize us there, the more things we can do, whether it's streams or written content or other fun things that we may come up with. Um, we are hoping to do some fun things for um, the streams that we do here. Um, you know, if we can just get, in our copious, and overwhelming spare time. Um, Also, want to give the shout out to the other stream that we do, which is the Strange Seeds live play of Unwritten. That is generally on the first Saturday of the month, though that changes sometimes according to player and GM schedules. Um, but the next episode of that is scheduled to be November 6th. And we'll get to see, how our intrepid Denis um, journeymen or journey people um, get to deal with the sort of shadow war that's happening between the uh, Relima and the Cult of the Seed. So, uh, sounds like lots of drama, so that should be fun. Also, I've kind of noticed that as I go along, I'm starting to sort of retread particular topics when I talk, especially when I'm starting to talk about role-playing games and that sort of thing, which was kind of the point. Um, so, Uh, if you have questions or ideas or topics you would like to hear me talk about, please drop those in the chat. I'll try to be monitoring the chat as we go along. Um, and I am always open to hearing from people. Heck, I'm open to hear, if you just want to talk about your day, I'll talk to you about that too. It's all about Uru and such. Okay, so here we are in exile. We have finished Amateria. Um, and now I want to do Voltaic. I'm gonna have to pull up some of my old old notes though, um, because Um, that means opening the door to Voltaic, and I don't necessarily remember off the top of my head what the pattern for the keys are. I know, silly me. Okay. Good airlock there. I'm sure it's probably not airtight, but it's the thought that counts. Okie doke. We'll go down here. Go across Jananin. I always want to call Jananin Janane for some reason. One of the problems I had as a generally prolific reader, but you know, mostly to myself, um, was the fact that I would see these relatively complex words, and I would eventually figure out what they were, either if I decided to look them up or what have you. Um, but I never got to use them in day-to-day speech, so I didn't know how to pronounce them. So I knew what a word like synchronicity looked like. I knew what it meant, and I could understand it in context. But for the longest time, I pronounced it synchronity. So there you go. And Jananin, especially, I mean, I think everybody has this problem with uh, age names, especially the ones that don't that people don't talk about, in character. I mean, NPCs do that. What how exactly do you say you know Amateria or Jananin or apparently people. There's been some times that we as players have decided on kind of settled on pronunciations that Cyan does not use internally or did not at least at first. Like Jalak, Jalak um, is actually Jalik, not Jalik, but Jalik. And the whole Dador thing that came up on it actually was a joke from Ryan Miller because it says like, Jalak the door. It sounds like, did you lock the door? And somehow that kind of got attached to things. So some people, know it as Jalak the door. Some people just know it as Jalak. Okie doke. Let's see, notes. Yellow, blue, green, red, yellow, purple, red. Ah, my notes have been good to me today. Uh-huh. And speaking of notes, now I gotta go get my screenshot of this. Okie doke. And this is, okay, yeah. Okay. Let's see if I got this one right at all. Goes there. This one goes over here. And that one goes there, I think. That's a good sound. And down comes the egg cage. I mean, what else does it look like? Maybe a seed. You know? Okay, into Voltaic. One of the things I love about Myst games is the machinery that they come up with. Um, to do things like, okay, someone had to sit down, game designer had to sit down and said, we need something to automatically open a book. What should that look like? What should the gears be? How should it operate? The great thing about Myst, the Myst developers and the various games that they do tend to actually pay attention to that sort of thing and decide, oh, well, how would this work? And how, well, you gotta put a gear here and it should rotate there. Voltaic. Voltaic is a fun age. Not the most, eye candy of ages. I know it, don't need to come over here yet. I'm just kind of poking at things. But yeah, Rachel, having a book stand that did that, or like the Relto shells that kind of just, pop things out, that would be really awesome. Um, oh, the background music sounds really loud. I want to turn it down a little bit. Um, I am betting that there are people in this community who could figure it out. We have a lot of very talented makers and crafters and carpenters in our community, like Parker, like Curator, um, and many more. I think if there's any community can figure out how to actually make one of those things, it would be this one. So yeah. Well, let's go into the tunnels here. Music's really going today. Do do do. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Rachel, they're the rare examples of Denis tech that are useful but not needlessly complex. Yeah, Denis like their gadgets and their spin arounds and things like that. Um, and like I've said before, I consider that sort of a cultural trait, kind of inherent to who they are. Um, and I tend to bring that up in games. Okay, yeah, there's a way. I forget how we turn these. Does it? Gotta turn the paddles on. Gotta find the right place for those. How is the sound for the game for you guys? It keeps coming across really loud for me, but I don't know if that's getting to you guys. Uh, this way. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh, good. Good. Thank you, Rachel, for letting me know. Okay, we've got that, which means we've started the power up. Is the power down? Oh, yeah, we haven't actually started power because we haven't engaged it all yet. Got one more thing to get plugged in there. Did I do something in the wrong order? I probably did. Okay. It probably wants to be. I can't do nothing about that now. Um, I have to go turn the water off. That's gonna be a pain. But let me just double check. Well. I will remember what that's for later. I will totally get that. Okay. Got that. I'm gonna turn the water off. And I'll see if that did it. One of the things I do like about Voltaic, even though it's not a very showy age, I mean, you know, there's nothing really glowing. There's no strange, you know, There's no strange creatures or plants. You know, no rocks mysteriously floating, which is an important part of, you know. Oh nope, that was definitely not it. Uh, but there's no there's no rocks floating, which is an important part of any Myst game. Is that there be something somewhere where the rocks are floating. Um, it's just, I mean, you could, kind of see this, and you expect to see this in any sort of, um, you know, game. But what I really like about it is just how much sense it makes. There's never really there's very little hand wavy bits like, don't, nope, something happens here. I mean, it all kind of makes sense. I mean, if you assume that, if you assume that, the things that are, we have, all, exist, and, they operate by, rational principles. Wait, I didn't get to the other side of that one. I should know, remember that. Um, then Voltaic makes perfect sense. You just got to know where, all the fiddly bits are. And it does very much, does very much demonstrate that thing that Atris is sort of trying to get with all of this. The point that he's trying to get across to the boys, um, which is about, what power is. I mean, in terms of, the actual physical power, electricity, that sort of thing, how it operates and how it interacts. Kind of really hits that theme home, and so I like it for that reason. Okay, now what am I forgetting? I did this. We go down there. I go down this way. I forget. Do, 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 do. Uh-huh. Hello, Junie girl. Welcome back. Thanks for showing up. We are just running through um, Voltaic, um, and I am once again forgetting key things about the age, which are important. That one. But I'll remember them. But and uh, Junie, like I said to Rachel and everyone else who was listening to you before, I'm kind of worried that I'm becoming repetitive. So please, feel free to, add your 2 cents into the conversation whenever you feel like. Um, if you have ideas or, I mean, anything you want to talk about, things you want me to talk about, whatever. Let's make it a interactive sort of thing. Okay, now what am I forgetting? Do, do, do. Okay, maybe it's something there that I'm forgetting. I got that. Okay, hi Landris. Uh, um, good to see you. And without giving you any spoilers, um, what are you most excited for the upcoming arc of the Strings story? Um, see, I think you're just trying to actually get spoilers out of me. Um, don't worry, Landris will probably survive. He may never be the same again, but he'll probably survive. But I mean, I'm really enjoying how the characters interact with the ideas that I keep throwing out there, um, and kind of which directions they take. Um, yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time, Landers. Um, I really I like the interplay between my ideas and the player's ideas. I think it goes to some very interesting places. Um, I have some specific things, you know, planned for maybe not this arc, but the next one that I'm really interested to see what you guys do with. Um, but how much of that we actually do does depend on what you guys do and what the players do. Um, and what things the players seem to be interested in. It could be, I have an idea that could be really cool, but could go completely wrong real easy. So either we'll have some really awesome sessions, or we'll have some really awesome video of how a game can crash and burn. Either way, it should be entertaining. Okay, what am I forgetting here? That thing. I've got to get the power in place, but I can't close that. Um, I can't close it well. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Doo, 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 doo. But yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to see at some point, I think, is to see a couple more people either streaming or recording or whatever, them running their own games of Unwritten. Um, because I know that I mean, I did write Unwritten, but I know I run a very particular sort of game that isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea. Um, and okay, what am I forgetting here? Um, you know, I run a very loose game, even for a Fate game. Okay, maybe you have to turn off both things. Hear that? There's some silly little thing that I am forgetting that's real easy. Because that's what I do is I forget about the little fiddly bit and then, I run past the lever 7 times um, and not notice it. Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. Doo, 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 doo. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see I mean, I'd like to not only watch, but like display to people, what other different ways things can be done with Unwritten. What other ways that we can see, examples of, the Diniverse from other perspectives, that sort of thing. Um, you know, I have some ideas about how to, run some, I'd like to see how people handle, the whole sort of, conflict is not violence ethos that Unwritten has from their own perspective. Um, I mean, you've obviously seen how I do it. You know, I mean, I very carefully chose the people who are playing because they were, you know, very enthusiastic about the game, and we're also, you know, relatively, personable while playing the game. There's a little bit of, gotta make sure. Oh, stop it. Gotta make some some entertainment value sort of thing. But I'm really happy with this group of players. Um, but wait, no, that turns off. I am misremembering something here, and it's gonna bother the hell out of me. And it's gonna be boring for you guys. Um, so, Landra, since you're here, I mean, is there a type of unwritten game or theme or topic or something that you think would be particularly awesome? That may or may not actually fit in the game we're playing. Okay, what am I? Now, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, especially since I know that you are a veteran role player. Oh, okay. Am I really doing this? Okay, I think I may be. What I get for trying to do puzzles and um, you know, trying to do puzzles and talk at the same time. Landris, yeah, I mean, feel free to share whatever you would like um, with everyone um, about. I mean, I know that you have an incredible number of projects and an incredible number of very interesting projects going on a lot of the time. So um, definitely feel free to share what you're up to in whatever level of detail you'd like. And generally consider that sort of an open door. I mean, for everybody too. I mean, not just laundress, but if you're doing some interesting things, whether it be you know, specifically unwritten related or not, you know, feel free to share that here. Yeah, I should have remembered that. I just kept messing up the order and forgetting that which things had to be turned on and which things had to be turned off. And there we go. That's much better. A little a little detail that I love about this game is that when you go here, since it's turning now, it does spin. In fact, spin you around. Also, these are great, you know, you know, big pressure doors there. If you ever want to sell players on something that you might, like this is heavy duty door type, describe, or secure area. Describe a door like that. You know, especially when they open the door, it goes, and the bars go this way. It's a it's a little bit of extra kind of running around. I mean not extra. I mean extra description that's not really necessary, but the little details like that can sell things like crazy. Okay, here we have our friend Savidro.
20 years alone. They tied me to a post. They burned their Myst linking books in front of me. They took everything I had. My wife! My 2 baby girls! And then, when I finally made it back to Narayan and I saw... It would have been better if I had died.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what you think of the brothers, they really know how to be evil. I mean, just absolutely, unquestionably, like really nasty. Okay, and here we go down to the power thing. Of course, we see up here we've got our numbers. The numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the numbers themselves really don't have a huge amount of connection to the puzzle, but it is a good kind of thing to let for people to understand that there are 5 different things here. Otherwise you can lose count of them going around. It's like, oh, how many of these things am I having to look at? But okay, let's see here. The bottom one has those 3 prongs right here, so we've got to have something that matches up with those no matter what. Excuse me. so those match up, so that's one potential solution, actually. I know that middle doesn't match up, but the top matches up, so I mean, and the top and the bottom are the only definites that we have, and so I'm kind of playing off of those for the moment to see, you know, and then I'll do the middle, see, you know, how we can line them up. Okay, so the bottom works here. Um, bottom works there. Bottom works there. I don't know if I've gone too far. Bottom works there. I think that's all of them, but so yeah, this one, the top does work, but I know on the later ones it does not. So here, so we gotta get the top in some way that lines up. It's got 2 prongs. Got an interesting pattern. Okay, that works there. At least the top does. Top works there. Top works there. Top works there. Okay, so at this point we just gotta kind of get the middle in place. Yeah, the middle here is weird. Those prongs up right here. Oh, there we go. Ta-da! Okay, we got something going on here. Okay, we've got some stuff here from Laundress, which I'm going to read off. You in the chat, or have probably already read it by this point, but for posterity's sake, at the very least. So something that's been a lot of fun to dive into that's been in the works for a bit is a Denis take on the lesson ages from Exile. We never saw much of the Guild of Writers' learning process in the Book of Tiana because it was Gen's journey. So continuing with the 5 concept, I laid out 5 core concepts that would be important for new writers to know and understand. One of these concepts, for example, is applied force brings with it induced strain. Each of these lessons was tied to a particular age, and they all linked back to a central hub. Then similarly to Jananin and eventually unlocking Orion, the hub here would eventually unlock another portion of the hub wherein the prospective student would receive their first Cortinia, which is a blank book. I've played with both having it be a group of prospective writers in the ancient era of Denis and members of the DRC or cavern dwellers having rediscovered these ages somewhere in the ruins of Denis. Now, that's actually a really cool idea. I mean, it's a good way of taking this, same idea from Exile and, but also making it very Denis. And so, I mean, in some ways, there's sort of the idea of, how much of this style of thing is Idris's own brainchild, or did he pick this idea up from the Denis? So, did he find lesson ages or records of lesson ages, just like Laundress describes, and then go, this is a great thing to do. And giving genealogical reasons obsessed about the number 5. I mean, I'm not sure that you always need a logical reason for, Gen. I mean, he's Gen. That's sort of the point of someone who's a little bit power mad, is they kind of step away from logic at some point. But the Denis did really like 5. It's all over the place. So I think that's a really cool idea. So, did I just go in a circle? Yeah, I just went in a circle. I did that. I'll need to stop going in circles. So yeah, I mean that sounds pretty awesome, Londris. I'd love to see some examples of that. Um, I think it'd be very interesting to figure out. Um, Very interesting to kind of think of, you know, the exact principles you choose that are being to be taught. Um, might say a lot about how the writers thought about things. Um, you know, what were those principles that they felt were really core and important? Um, you know, or maybe there are several sets of these lesson ages, and this one gets you to your first blank book, and then another one gets you to some other sort of reward. So yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think it's one of those ones that deserves um, some more work on it. Yeah. Okay, I need to get the water flowing on this one. Lander says he tried to make them a bit more nebulous as well, carrying the possibility for multiple interpretations. That's really smart. That's really smart. Um, Not only for players figuring out things. I mean, on several levels. Okay, who designs doors like this? Honestly, I mean, only like Atris would, or does the Nitty. Um, but yeah, I think they're smart on some level, on very many levels. From a perspective of well, there might be lots of interpretations the Denis were trying to get across, or specifics, and then as a GM, you don't necessarily need to have those all in stone. If you'll excuse the pun. Um, but also just for players being able to come up with different concepts that you might want to run with. Where is it? Go past it. There we go. You know, to allow different lessons to be taught. All kinds of. I think there's all kinds of good stuff there. Okay, so now here we're in the lava room. Yep, being able to improv is a very important skill when you're running abstract games. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and people who listen. I mean, the more you listen to this live stream, the more you'll hear that, and you'll probably get sick of me saying it, but it is in fact the case. My style of running games is heavily dependent on it. In some cases, that's been really good. Some cases, I've run some really crappy games. Rachel, that's a really great kind of idea. Another layer there too. There could be references, histories, journals, and such about how writers in different periods of history decided which concepts they thought were important. That's another great way to add, um, depth to the background. Once again, this is this conversation is a great example of why I am a big fan of working on some of the ideas collaboratively, whatever your particular group is like, because everybody's going to come up with some really cool ideas. I mean, some people are just really good at it, and so they come up with a lot, and there's it kind of happens. No, stop it. But everybody has some really cool ideas waiting in there, and when you get them all kind of bouncing off each other, you get some really, really nice backgrounds, nice scenarios, nice characters. Oh, I should have done the other side. Doo -doo -doo. This puzzle is the one in Voltaic that took me the longest, and I went back and forth on it a whole bunch of times because you can see how easily I kind of get lost on, like, oh wait, did I do that? Do I need to do this? But okay, so, multiple tables of Unwritten would be pretty awesome. I mean, multiple tables of any sort of role-playing process, honestly, would be really awesome. I think we just need a lot. I think we just need to get more people kind of interested in the role playing and more people interested in the actual GMing. There's a lot of people. I mean, I think once again with the players, with our fandom, we have a lot of really creative people who would be great players. Um, and creative players. And just we need the GMs to kind of run things and the place to get everybody together. I know there are a lot of players who just don't have a group who seem to be interested in this sort of environment or world, which is a shame. But maybe more online games, that sort of thing. Okay, I hope I did that right. Here we go. Back across the cavern. Here we have the Steam puzzle. Just a sec. Yeah. I know, Laundress, you're doing 100 things at once all the time, but yeah, I'd love to see some more games going. Um, oh no, that was not Ellery. I don't know if we're doing pad thai today. I don't get paid till later this week, so things might be a little tight. No, that was just me trying to hydrate so my voice doesn't go you know dead. So we're at Steam, this Steam puzzle, and this is the one in Voltaic that I've seen give people the most problem when I watch them on streams. Um, and for one big reason, that right there. And this little thing is, because you have to, squeeze it, and then you have to pull it, pull it to go for it, this to move up and down. A lot of people will go like this, like, oh, well, I'll figure out what that's for, and then they go back and they spend a lot of time running, like, is it over here? Do I kind of click it? When really often what they just need to do is, you know, come on. Ah, of course now I stepped on my own moment there. Probably need some more steam. Rachel says, I actually spread word about Unwritten in another stream a couple weeks ago because the streamer was playing real Myst and I found her through an appearance in a Cortex Prime game. I have yet to play Cortex Prime. I really, really want to. Um, and I've had, at least half a dozen times plans to run a Cortex Prime game of my own. Not Unwritten in particular, but just in general. Um, because I've read a lot of Cortex Prime. I've read the Cortex Prime book. Um, I almost actually ended up being an author for one of their stretch goals, but I had problems with my email, and so the guy emailed me, and I tried to email him back, and it bounced. Something weird because of on my email side. So we didn't get it in time. And then when they finally got me in the list, they didn't make it to that stretch goal level. Um, and so I'd really like to run Cortex Prime. Um, I've toyed with this and discussed with a couple people about the possibility of a Cortex Prime version of Unwritten. Um, and kind of trying to see, what sort of things we can tease out of Cortex Prime as a system. Um, to kind of really apply to the Unwritten and how Unwritten does things. Um, I do not know, however, uh, if slash when we will get there. Rachel says I'm actually writing a Cortex game inspired by Pokemon and Final Fantasy that I plan to publish once their creator studio is alive. That is awesome. Not only are those two awesome games to be inspired by, and Cortex Prime is an awesome game to write in, but taking the chance and just writing the game and seeing if you can figure things out and play test it and revise and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's really awesome. And I mean, if you've got the drive for it and the time and energy for it, you know, go for it. Absolutely, that's incredibly awesome. And I hope that you kind of keep us updated on that as things go along. I mean, who knows how long it'll be? It may be short time, whatever. But and who knows how long I'll be streaming? Depends, you know, my time and energy. But yeah, I definitely would love to hear about it on a regular basis. Fire marbles are just a materia. Yeah, pretty much. But no, yeah, Rachel, that's really awesome. And so definitely keep us updated on it. And I know that at some point they're going to do the Cortex Prime Creator Studio. Um, Hopefully, relatively soon. But at some point, I know Cam's got a lot on his plate. Cam's doing like a dozen different things all the time. Uh, Come on. There we go. So, Rachel, what is it that you like about Cortex? I don't. Did you play Cortex Plus before Cortex Prime? Oh, Rachel says, I think my biggest challenge so far has been balancing the video game feel against keeping the game from getting too mechanically complex. Yeah, that is a hard balance to strike. Um, because video games are all mechanics. Because that's what you're fiddling with. Um, I hear a lot of good things about Cortex. I know that Lenny, who you know wrote Fate and helped with Unwritten quite a bit. Um, he's actually a huge fan of Cortex. That's his actual go-to game nowadays. Um, more than Fate, oddly enough. Um, and so I keep really wanting to play it. I especially like the parts of Cortex that do go into areas that you don't see a lot of in games, like ah, nice. Look at that. Like the relationships and that sort of thing. Wait, what? I got it on it, damn it. Uh, am I getting it from the wrong angle? I may have to get getting it backwards and to go around. Or did I forget the thing here? Ah, that's all open. I have to admit, one of the funnest reads I've ever had. Um, okay, I'll get back to my other concept, but uh, Rachel is saying, my quick description of Cortex is Fate with polyhedral dice. I love how much flexibility the system has, not just for mechanics are used, but how rules light or heavy it can be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. You can just get all, you can do all sorts of things with those mechanics. I mean, especially with Cortex Prime, with how much they have. I mean, Cortex Plus had lots of different builds. You know, there was the Leverage build, and then there was the Smallville build, and the Marvel Superheroes build, and eventually the Firefly build. And then they had the Cortex Hacker's Guide, which had all sorts of stuff in it. Um, but I really like how Prime kind of took those all into just these are all options you can play with, um, and made it sort of modular. Um, so I mean, a Cortex Prime there isn't really sort of a vanilla Cortex Prime, per se. Let's see here. Let's see what it actually does here. Okay, I am in fact, moving towards the right direction on this. Uh, but let's see here. Let's go that and turn all these off. Well, that's not enough. I know I should be counting the little slots and stuff like that. Um, to be completely thorough. And for some reason, I'm just not doing it today, so I'm just kind of fiddling with it. But yeah, the most fun I've read, I mean, I've had reading a game book was actually the Firefly, the Cortex Plus Firefly book. Um, and I think that the first section of that book is brilliant. Um, because what the first section is pretty much just a replay. You know, they're going through all of the episodes of Firefly one by one, giving a summary of a medium length summary of the episode. But in the middle of each of those descriptions, they stop and explain some of this. They stop and explain parts of each scene, parts of some of the scenes in mechanical terms. So you're reading about like, oh, okay, well, Mal did this, and this is what Mal did in this episode, and then you see like, okay, now if we were running this as a game, here's so Mal rolls the dice, and it's just it starts off with some very simple examples during the first episode summary, and then as summaries go along, their examples get more intricate and introduce more mechanics, and it's just this incredibly natural way of not only either learning about the TV show or reminding yourself, you're refreshing yourself on a TV show, but also having the mechanics explained at the same time. So yeah, it's really sort of it's I just found it really brilliant, and I was just kind of it knocked my socks off when um, I read it. Um, the layout of it as a game is okay. I mean, they definitely were given here's a bunch of pictures from the TV show. Use as much of them as you can for their art. So there's lots of pictures which are just like look, it's the cast standing together. You know, but yeah, from what it seems like, Cortex really is really good at that cinematic experience. I'm particularly also fond in Cortex itself the complications mechanic. When you do the roll, when you do your rolls, one's if you roll a one, it's a complication that the GM can then use, and there's points that move back and forth because of that. Or if the GM rolls a one, it's an opportunity that um, the players can then use. I really like it because it generates um, it sort of generates the drama by itself, which I think is really great. Um, One of the things about Fate when it comes to aspects is the compels, um, and the compels are meant to be a way of introducing complications and drama into the game, um, while incentivizing players to go along with it. If you go with the drama, then you get points. Um, um, but if you, um, which is pretty good. I mean, the GM, you're like, okay, this is nope, your character really should be causing problems here. Um, as was pointed out recently to me, um, as a Fate GM, I don't tend to actually do compels very often. Partially because I tend to think that is that actually it? That okay, let's see if it's actually close enough. I must be just off or something. Yeah, I am. Yeah, which is kind of weird because the compels are one of the kind of central mechanics of Fate of that sort of falling forward and incentivizing players um, incentivizing players to get themselves in trouble because it's interesting. Nope, wrong way. Um, I mean, I've been lucky with that I've generally found slash chosen players that want to get themselves in trouble, just sort of on a regular basis. Um, and so I haven't, I often don't find, people are constantly like, if you look at how Thomas plays Landris, Thomas is constantly looking at his aspects and like saying, how would this affect things? And Landris, would, and sometimes that helps Landris, and sometimes it puts Landris in a spot. Um, excuse me. Um, and oh, um, and so a couple people said, well, you're kind of missing part of the game when you don't actually, you know, use uh, the compels very often. And that's something that's kind of one of my weaknesses as particularly as a Fate GM, because I'm very used to trying to get that out of players. I'm very used to trying to get that out of players um, in situations where they're not incentivized. Rachel says, yeah, on one hand, the characters get themselves in enough trouble to keep the game interesting without needing to compel them. On the other hand, you have to make sure that they're able to earn fate points to keep the point economy moving. Otherwise, players have to wait until their next session to refresh points. Exactly. Um, I'm a very sort of light fate economy sort of GM, which is odd, I think. Oh, I think that's the same situation before. Yeah. Okay, I need to put a few brain cycles actually towards this. Um, but yeah, Rachel, yeah. I mean, that's sort of the basis of Fate. Um, and with the complications in the roles from in Cortex Prime, I've been thinking that maybe that might fit my game style a little bit better, because then you know the, the random element itself kind of pops up the okay, something goes, here's the time to pull something out of your hat to make things go sideways. Yeah, Landris, you guys have played pretty cautiously. Some of it is that there are some times where I'm like, oh well, I shouldn't make this too hard, um, for hard's sake. But that might be something I need to adjust. Maybe the world needs to be a little bit harder for you guys. We will see. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm probably going to end up discussing that a bit more with the group. Um, before the sessions and all, we sit down and we talk about a couple things. We talk during the break and such. We keep in contact during the week, etc. I don't want to release some pressure here. Keep swinging past it, so we don't have enough pressure here. Add this one. That's too much pressure. Let's go here. And up there, I think we only have like one or two actually pressurized. What happens if I release this pressure? It's not going to be correct though. Yeah. Back to my initial state, really. And I have to reset my brain. Okay, now I'm focusing on this puzzle thing. So, how much pressure does that release? Too much. And I think it's the lowest of them, but yeah, I'm gonna need to sit down and write numbers. I was hoping I'd be able to skip past this really quickly, relatively quickly with just kind of, let's futz here, let's futz there, but wrong one. Okie doke. Let me write a few things down. There's that 4 here, and not the 4 there. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. Laundress, you said you said Laundress is kind of got two different things he's thinking about for his milestone. Is that something that you want to expand on, or are you going to keep in, keep under your hat, or maybe your maintainer's helmet, as it were? Okay, so here's a question from Rachel. Unwritten question. Could you talk a bit about the process of choosing which skills would be in the game? Specifically, as a game dev, you'd have to think about the skills you'd put in the book that will encourage players to behave in certain ways. Yeah, exactly. Um, as a game dev, you are sort of mapping out the way that things are supposed to go. Um, which is or at least not necessarily the way things are supposed to go, um, but at the very least, sort of the slope of the terrain that you want people to have to deal with. Um, and so, how you, sort of map those, how you map those, what skills you choose is one of the ways that you do actually. Um, I'm sorry to get distracted now by trying to do two things again at once again. Um, and I keep forgetting this part up here. Let's see here. Ah, there we go. That's the one I keep forgetting about. Um, okay, so back to your question. Um, so thinking about the skills, I mean, there's a sort of standard, there's kind of a standard skill set that started with Fate. But I really wanted the game, but players, to reflect what I saw players do in um, unwritten games. Now, in Fate, there's a default skill called Investigate. And I figured, okay, people are figuring stuff out, right? And that's what you do in Myst games, is you figure things out. Okay, let's try this one. Try this one. So yeah, um, so I was like, okay, well, I need to pay a lot of attention to the investigate skill. Just like when you're like making a character for some other game, and you want to play a combat specialist, you put a lot of focus on like, oh, I need to make sure I put my points in attack and defense and all that sort of thing. And so I was like, okay, I need to be able to focus on the investigate skill and what you do with it, and in general, you know, is that finally? It's finally. Um, I know I keep getting stopped up and not actually getting to the answer to your question, but this is done now, so that should be helpful. Okay. Um, but yeah, I focused a lot on investigate. How is investigate going to work? People are going to be using investigate a lot. well, what's going to keep them from just like putting all their points in investigate then? I mean, there's some of the you can't necessarily police what people do, and um, but if it's a game about investigation, then they're going to be using investigate all the time, and then when they want to be better at what they're doing in the game, they're going to increase their investigate. So, I spent a lot of iterations of the game were different things to do, investigate, and you know, ways to try to make investigate more interesting, and to reflect different sorts of sort of thing. And I realized because the game is about investigate. I mean, really, the entire game of Unwritten is about investigate. That the investigation, um, using the investigation skill. So why not? And this is where it kind of got, part of the idea of moving towards a discover action. You know, why not make all skills investigate skills? Um, so that way, you can, it's like, okay, well, I'm investigate, but I have a really high engineering, so I can investigate with engineering. But that's then two skills you're going to manage. It's like, well, why not just, since everyone's going to be investigating, everybody's going to be looking at everything, every skill is investigate. So I removed the individual investigate skill, and then made the idea that there be an action of discover, finding out information. Um, and then looked at how can I use each of the skills that I have in order to ask questions or figure things out about the world. So in that way, I had to kind of think out of the box in the sense of not so much that investigate needs to be a skill, but it needs to be sort of just a primary thing that the player can do. Um, and also, similarly, since I didn't want to really focus on combat or violence, um, I realized that I don't really need a skill for it. Um, there are lots of other skills that I could use for it if I do need it, for some reason. Um, but those skills are also have other uses. Well, I shoot really well. That's kind of hand-eye coordination. I put that kind of that agility sort of thing under finesse. You know, I'm really strong. Well, being really strong helps you muscle open doors and that sort of thing. So you've got physique, that sort of thing, or sorry, athletics. Because I kind of wanted to highlight athletics, but so um, by taking away the explicit skill that you go to, is like, okay, where's my fight skill? It means that you have to think about, okay, well, how do I fix things? And even just the act of like, well, where's my fight skill? How I want to punch him. How do I do that? That is, you know, that becomes a lateral thinking problem. And there he is. I'm being lever blind again. It becomes a lateral thinking problem, and um, that encourages people to think differently. Now, for the skills that once skills I did decide to include, it was and how I divided them up. It was issues of focus. Um, you know, you could put you know craft and engineering in the same skill. I mean, you're building things, and there's a lot of overlap. Between craft and you know, more extensive crafting and carpentry and and engineering as actual engineering machines and such. But I wanted those to feel like separate things, if that makes any sense. I wanted there to be the person who was essentially like Thomas here, can make stuff, and I can build things, and if you need, need some leather work, I can do that. And I wanted someone who was an expert. I want people to be experts in machinery as well. Um, and so, each skill, for each of the skills I chose, um, I thought about, you know, what if the player, what if you had a character who this was their best skill? This, this is their thing. It's the apex skill on the pyramid, on the fate pyramid. But in general, this is the engineering guy, and she's the survival person, and that person's the athletics person. What sort of characters would that allow? Um, and one, do I want to focus on any of those characters? And so I make sure that there's a skill that focuses on that type. And if there are types of characters that none of these really lend themselves to, then I need a skill that does allow me to create that sort of specialist character. Um, so I mean that's sort of how I ended up with some things like skills like surveying. Um, I mean, there's a guild of surveyors. Oh, and here we go up. All electricity in place, and the floating electromagnetic. We finally have floating rocks here. Okay, it's a Myst game. We have floating rocks. Everything's okay. Um, it also mirrors the little thing in Safidro's desk. Does this sort of thing as well. But but yeah. So I was like, there's a guild of surveyors. I mean, there's a guild of mechanists and guild of chemists. Um, but there's a guild of surveyors, and that is a big thing for the Myst universe. So there needs to be somebody who, there needs to be a way for someone to be an expert surveyor that has a different flavor than, say, just, an expert, hunter or an expert survivalist. So surveying became a thing. Um, um, there's sort of the trifecta of skills in terms of, um, notice, research, and experiment. Those are kind of weird because they're very specific to what I wanted to be able to be done in Unwritten. Um, which was I wanted to represent the different ways that people essentially solve puzzles or figure things out. Um, oh, here's the big reveal. Pause. And here's our second symbol. A little bit of irony there. So okay, so I'm still kind of pontificating. So hopefully, Rachel, this is being useful to you in some way, and if it's not, let me know, or if you want me to kind of steer one direction or the other, go ahead and let me know, or anybody does. Um, but so I wanted to reflect the different ways that people can figure things out. There are the people who are like Atris, who figure things out by, they experiment. They try this, they see what happens. They try that, they see what happens. These are the ways that they, figure things out. This is how they get they find truth. There are also the people who are well learned, who spend a lot of time, learning things, memorizing, understanding, and I chose research for that. Not only to represent the ability to research, but they represent how much research could be done they've done, or what sort of general academic knowledge base they have. And okay, Adana. I'm gonna save it right here, just for the moment. Uh, Woo. And let's resume the game. And then finally we'll be going to Adana. I probably will not finish Adana in this one because I said I have problems navigating Adana. Um, but so I had experiment, which is sort of Atris, research, which is sort of Dr. Watson. But I also wanted the ability. Um, also wanted the ability to have that sort of person who's just smart. They notice details and they figure things out just out of this sort of prowess of mind, even if they're not educated. Um, um, I know some people who are incredibly intelligent, but they haven't had a lot of education. Um, and they're just they're quick-witted, they're perceptive, and so that's why I kind of kept noticing there as well. uh Was there much of concern about balancing the skills against each other, as in making sure certain skills were so specific that they became that weren't so specific that they became situational, while other skills were used all the time? Yeah, absolutely. um Now, I'm always very careful when we start talking about balance, because that's a sort of a that's one of those terms in gaming that gets bandied about a bit, and doesn't have a really good definition. People go through a lot of things a lot of gyrations in their quest for balance. And I'm doing that with air quotes. You can't see it though. Balance, air quotes. Um, that don't necessarily need to be done, but you do want to, you know, some things are very situational. Do you really need a skill for that? You know, and you kind of guess, like, well, I don't know. It's not going to come up very often. No, I don't need a skill. We can fold it under, some other skill. Or like, um, when I was looking at investigate, I figured investigate would be used all the time. So, that while I wanted investigation to be part of the game, it dominated the skill tree too much. It didn't allow for a lot of flexibility for players. So yeah, um, some of them, yeah, just you know, I have a tendency to try to group more specific skills into larger ones, and just kind of go with larger, more general skills. Um, that's kind of my style. So I mean, there were a lot of there's like the whole you could have all sorts of different types of scientists, or you could be a linguist, and you could be an anthropologist, and I didn't want to have an anthropology skill and a linguistic skill and a chemistry skill, and you know what if there's some sites that I didn't manage to include in the list, and I'd forgotten about it. you know um, but the idea, I went with the idea that the things like experiment and research can model what scientists are doing and what scholars are doing, um, and let the details come from aspects. Aspects, I think, an underappreciated role of aspects in a Fate game is that they provide justification, because they're true. You know, if you got an aspect, world's best archer. I know maybe we're being a little bit into MCU here, but it's one of my other big fandoms. Um, world's best archer. I mean, it means you're the world's best archer. It's true. Um, so that means that you should be able to do things with your bow and arrow, with that finesse skill, that other people cannot. And if I have a aspect that says, you know, I am, a well-respected linguist, my research skills and my experiment skills, my notice skills, and all the other skills that might be useful in my discipline, um, I can use those in ways that a non-linguist would not. Thus, um, you know, those sort of special things that you see as specialties in a lot of skill systems, you can just put those aside and just say, there are details um, about the character as an aspect, which means they're important and true. Um, and then you can just refer back to them. A maintainer wouldn't know how to do this with engineering. A healer won't. Um, so that's where I find a lot of the place where I, when it comes to balancing, like, this gets used all the time versus this shouldn't, I, I, I forgot, I decide on what sort of characters and actions do I want to focus on and enable. Um, what other ones do I want to avoid? And when I'm sort of balancing them, I want to make sure that people have the option. People have options, and my personal strategy for making things for dealing with the complexity is to make the skills more general, and then let the details come from other places. That's not everybody's style. Um, I know at least one person who, when I talk to them about how I run a fake game, they have hives because you're just like, well, no, well, what about this and this? And it's like, well, yeah, I don't care. Um, my way is not better. It's just my way, and that's what works best with me. An example of this um, I know this is not visually interesting now since I'm just kind of sitting there. Um, another example of this is, um, if you have a modern game, should you have a separate computer skill? Um, Computers are a big deal in modern society. I mean, it's huge. Um, and um, so the question is, well, I mean, you know, yeah, Landra says, as long as your players enjoy your game, rule zero is perfectly acceptable. Absolutely. I think people who design game systems and games tend to forget that, partially because they are interested in ways, in mechanics and ways of solving these problems. But sometimes it's just like you go, don't do it if it's not fun. But back to the computer skill example, you know, and in Unwritten, Unwritten's modern, you know, there's a computer hacker, an ace computer hacker is going to have a very different understanding of engineering as opposed to, you know, your, you know, you know, you know, mechanic who's been working on, engines since they were like, 3 years old. And the question is, I had to ask myself is, does that matter in Unwritten? Um, and ultimately, even though I'm a computer person and I, definitely, consider myself in the hacker um, sort of milieu, not in like as in real hackers, but I'm a computer person, so like the futz with computer things. Um, but as much as I love computers and they're core to who I am, um, they're not core to Unwritten. I mean, there's not a lot of computer things that you do in Unwritten. I mean, there's the lattice and there are the keys, but they mostly act like black boxes. There's not a lot of breaking into, you know, and so I left the computer skill off because it became entirely too situational. It would only be used in some very specific situations. Um, and while those situations exist and are very important on the surface, they're not important to the game that we play. So I don't know. I don't know, Rachel or Laundress and the rest of you, if you feel like that answered any questions, um, or if I'm just making my throat sore. But Rachel says there's also the in-game challenge of giving the players plenty of opportunities to use the skills they choose to emphasize for their characters. Exactly. Um, I um, I was in a game once where you know I was told, okay, you're going to want to buy this skill up really hard. I'm like, well, I don't want to play a you know a huge combat character or they're like, but yeah, but it just comes up all the time, so buy the skill. You're going to be bored if you don't buy the skill, because you're not going to be in it. And you know, part of that was I was not you know I wasn't the game was about that sort of thing. Um, and I was kind of going the other direction with with what I wanted to do, which was something that I needed to adjust. But it always bothers me the idea that you have to buy a particular skill out of what is supposed to be otherwise a relatively um, you know equal set of skills to choose from in order for the game to operate properly. So I guess I'd say yeah, I mean if you look at your thing and you're like like I did with Investigate, that everybody's going to need it, then there's something wrong with your skill set. If there's any of the skills that are there that can't be really interesting if someone really focuses on them, then it's not a good skill. There, yeah. And Linus is right. Anything that you can do with computers and written, you can do with engineering, or research, or experiment, or notice. You know, and sometimes if the computer's just making weird noises, use athletics to give it a hard whack, and there you go. Percussive maintenance is a completely valid use of athletics when it comes to um, computer operation. Okay, now let's spend a little bit more time, here on the actual game. Oh, feel free to throw out more questions, ideas, topics of conversation, things that you might be working on. Like let's go. Yeah, I might need to go through here. You can see that I play um, my video games much like I run my tabletop games. I kind of do it by the seat of my pants. Oh, I wonder what's going on here. I'm glad I could, Rachel. I'm glad that I could provide some sort of useful answers for you. Um, I don't know your experience in game dev in terms of things that you've read and done. So, um, I apologize if sometimes I explain something that maybe seem overly simple to you, or I may get used to the sound of my own voice. That's always an issue. But yeah, hopefully you'll find something helpful there. And for making games, I mean, you know, game development's really kind of fun. Um, I think there are some parts to it that people don't expect. Just like there are parts of writing, you know, fiction or nonfiction that people don't expect, and a lot of it's busy work, and a lot of it's structural work, like you know, when I'm designing, I have to think about, what sort of, all the different rules on designing, but also I have to figure out, how I expect people to learn the rules. Am I presenting the rules properly? Are they rules that will work for everyone or work for most people? Um, One of my worst gaming, development experiences was I had a really cool game that my friends and I kind of put together, and we loved, and we had a bunch of fun for it. And I tried to make it into something a bit more generic, and no one else I gave it to cared. I mean, had any fun with it. It just wasn't. It was something that worked just really well between the people at our table. That is okay. It just means it's not necessarily a good game. It's still a good experience. Okay, let me get my things here. I am a big fan of sort of the late 90s, early noughts um, discussion on role playing game theory that you see at places like the Forge, um, which isn't actually active any longer, I think, but it's where a lot of people started discussing role playing games, not just as sort of games, but from a sort of sort of a deeper design perspective. Did I get that right? Yes. Woo, I got it right. So there's some. I think there's some. If you can go find the Forge, um, just look up the Forge and RPG um, on in Google. There's some really good um, uh, sort of role-playing game theory essays there. Um, it's kind of the place where the the discussion of systems. There's always been the thing of a good GM can make any system work and can do whatever they want with any particular system, which is true. But that a good game allows a good GM to do even more in a particular way by deciding what it's about. And you can talk about stuff about simulationist versus narrativist versus gamist, and different stances, actor stance, and you know you know resolution methods, fortune, fate, destiny. It's all it's all fun and games until someone plays a game, and it's still fun games, hopefully. Okay, the big tree Adana. I may actually wrap up a little quicker today, earlier today than normal, because I'd really like to kind of go through Adana all at once instead of doing piecemeal, partially because of how um, easily I can get confused. Um, Wait, there's another question, or at least a comment. My process started out: how would Pokemon work in Cortex? Or, okay, Pokemon is actually ridiculously complicated, but I can make it something simpler, and if it's legally distinct, I can publish it. Yeah. And then I did the same thing with Final Fantasy and realized I could combine them. See, there you go. Um, you know, it's always useful to take, your ideas and kind of run with them for a bit. And if you don't get anywhere with them, too far with them, at least, stuff that you wrote down, like, keep somewhere. Because then you can, there'll be times where you go back, like, oh, yeah, the thing I worked over here fits perfectly with this. Um, or, like, oh, wait, I can steal part of this and put it in that. Yeah, definitely. Um, I know there are a couple of, like, non-official Pokemon games out there. I don't know how they are. Um, and I was talking to somebody about it. They wanted to, also create a sort of Pokemon game. Um, it kind of came down to what was important about Pokemon for them, and they wanted sort of to be able to, you know, model the trainer's journey and going through and learning finding Pokemon and learning how their strengths and weaknesses and training them. So one of the ideas that we came up with is that the trainer actually has almost no skills by themselves. Like the things that they do in the world are almost entirely through the Pokemon. They don't have you know a tech skill or whatever like that. It's just the Pokemon that you acquire and how you train them give you your abilities to do other things as well. You know, you know, you don't have to be personally strong, but if you've got a really strong, if you've got a really strong, Machamp or Machamp, I'm probably saying that wrong. Then you don't need to be personally strong. You just do that. If you need something to do something with tech, you bring out um, the Pokemon who like possesses technology, whose name starts with an R, and I'm completely forgetting the rest of it. Um, but yeah, so I mean, there's lots of different ways to go there. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think I'm gonna start winding this down. Um, Anybody has some last topics they want to bring up or things that they're working on? This is the time, and I will, give them voice on here. Um, Adana is a very pretty place. And I really like the concept behind Adana and the things it's trying to teach. I just, it's just busy enough that I have trouble figuring out which way goes which. And I think that's a problem that a lot of, I think it's a problem a lot of games have, just in general, especially, you know, the point and click ones. It's like, well, okay, can I turn there or can I? Or in Riven, it's like, when I turn, did I actually turn 90 degrees? Did I turn 60? Did I turn around? You know, you know, I know that there's at least one place in Adana that every time I go there, I'm like, I can't find a little place where you go, little side area you go down. Because to my eyes, it doesn't look like a place you can go, but you can click on it. Oh yeah, here's the question from Rachel. She likes the music in the game. What is everyone's favorite music in this game? Um, for me, I like the music that's got the Nayarani lyrics in it. Because of course, um, it has it's sort of conlangy. You know, it's got sort of a conlang in it, and so thus that makes it interesting to me. I'm a sucker for anything with conlang in it. Um, but yeah, I really like. I've always liked the Myst games um, music. Um, there's only one time I've found that I don't want to listen to Myst game soundtrack, and that's when I'm on a long drive because most of it's very ambient and relaxing. And when I'm on a long drive, I don't want to be relaxed because that gets very close to asleep at the wheel. I discovered this the first time was going to my first Mysterium, which was 2006 and it was in Spokane. Is we were all excited and we had we were in the car and we get on the freeway and it's like, well, let's turn on the Myst soundtracks because we're going to see Cyan and it's like, okay, cool, we're getting to here's clock tower music, and then as we're going on, I'm like, wow, I'm relaxed. I'm really relaxed, and I'm the driver. This is bad. And so I had to say, guys, I really hate to say this, but can we not play Myst music? Because I need to stay awake. This is a very pretty song. I'll turn it up a little bit. These games always have a really good ambient music. My favorite songs in general in the Myst soundtracks actually tend to be ones from Uru. Um, though I discovered that well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself because these are things about Revelation and Uru, so we'll save them for then. Okie doke. Everybody, thank you for going with me on this journey of Voltaic, and thank you for being patient. Why I made stupid mistakes and went around in circles on the Steam Vents puzzle because I was too busy talking about other things. Um, Thank you for listening to me as I rant and pontificate on whatever topics come up. Um, I'm sort of I'm not like an entertainer or anything like that, but I've been told I've been a very good professor. So once I get on a roll for pontification and lecturing, I really roll. So I appreciate that people at least have enjoying themselves. Yeah. Thank you, Junie girl. Um, bye. See everybody next time. The next we've got next week, next Tuesday. We will continue Exile. Hopefully, we'll finish that off. We'll finish both of Donna and then do the rest in Narayan. Um, and also remember, October 6th is the next game of Strange Seeds. Um, your distract stream your skill is a +4. Yep, you've got a very good aspect of that. So yeah, and as you come back and forth. November 6th. Yes, thank you, Landris. I also typo like crazy too. When I try to type the knee, I almost always typo. So I have to redo my knee stuff like 5 times. Um, but yeah, um, yeah. So I think I'm gonna no time travel. Oh, fine. At least yet. See, now that you've mentioned it, you know, they'll just have to wait. Now that you've mentioned it, you'll have to wait for the time travel arc. Anyways, anyways. So as usual, buy Cyan stuff. More science, the more money Cyan has, the more cool things they can do for us. If you like what we do, hop on the Patreon. If you have ideas for things that you'd like to see from the Patreon, please let us know. Um, if you'd like have ideas you'd like to see here on the streams, whether it be just other games or other types of streams, um, please let us know. Um, I know I say this a lot, but there are some other things that we are working on, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring those to fruition. So, everybody have a great week. Be excellent to one another, and Shara.